This conference will now be recorded.
Go ahead, Len.
Okay,
Yeah.
Welcome to the AnCan High Risk Advanced Recurrent Prostate Cancer Group Tuesday, July 27. I'm Len Sierra, moderating for tonight. And we're going to start off with a new member, Brian Davenport. And Brian, I'm going to ask you some questions. And if you would please answer those questions one at a time as I pose them to you. That'll work out best for everybody.
Great.
So Brian, how old are you?
70.
Okay. Where do you live?
Vienna, Virginia.
Another local.
Virginian.
Yeah, they just keep coming, don't they?
What's wrong? What is wrong with this region?
Yeah. That's a good question, Herb.
They get the hell out of here.
Brian, how did you hear about AnCan?
Say again, Len.
How did you hear about AnCan?
I was part of a group with Joel Blanchett, and I think he's part of your group.
Yes,
and I'm in kind of a, we'll get to it, but a changeover in the treatments for myself. And Joel recommended that I join this group. So I'm about 2.5 hours into even knowing you existed.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you, and we hope you keep coming back. When were you first diagnosed?
In March of 2017. I'm sorry, March of 2019.
19.
Mhm.
And what was your Gleason score?
10.
Okay. And what was your PSA when you were first diagnosed?
305.
That's pretty healthy.
Yeah. 5 months earlier, it had been a 3.
Wow. That's quite a doubling time. Well, don't get too discouraged. We know of guys who have had PSAs in the thousands.
Okay.
Mr. Pelfrey, to name one who's on this call.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
guys who are still alive, by the way.
It's a good
Yes,
list.
I'm alive.
Mr. Pelfrey, would you like to just share what your opening PSA number was?
Well, I thought you were going to share it. 3,193.
Wow. Is that the record?
Oh,
I don't know.
My reading, I found somebody that had a 5,000 PSA.
Wow.
and I know of someone who had 7,000.
Wow.
All right. So, Brian, which doctor did you see and at which institution?
It was at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. And I started with a Dr. Nguyen, who was a military major.
All right. So he's a urologist.
He is a medical oncologist. I guess I started with a Dr. Rosner, who is in the urology department at Walter Reed at that time. She's no longer there.
Oh, okay. And when they did your biopsy, did they do any genetic studies?
They did, but it appeared that there wasn't anything they could latch onto that would help in the treatments.
Okay.
From a genetic basis.
So they did both germline or inherited plus somatic tumor sequencing.
You know, the hereditary, I'm positive they did because of the questions I had to answer.
Yeah.
I believe they did the other, but I can't tell you that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any family members, extended family members who have cancer of any kind?
Yes, both my mother and father, who are passed away, my father had prostate cancer that was very slow growing. He had other issues and opted not to do anything about the prostate cancer. And then my mother had breast cancer.
Okay.
And my brother,
We all were thinking BRCA2, but you say you had no germline mutations.
yeah, that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and you started to say about your brother.
My brother also had bladder cancer, and he's been a juvenile diabetic since for the last 45 years, and I donated a kidney to him in 2008, and he's still doing okay.
Well, that's fantastic. Let's see. And the oncologist you're seeing, was it a man or woman?
It's a man now. The oncologist today is a Dr. Park. Dr. Nguyen just was rotated out from Walter Reed, but I also am in conversation with Dr. Ravi Madden at NIH.
All right. And are you aware whether or not they are GU medical oncologist, GU specialist?
Ravi for sure.
Ravi?
Yeah,
Ravi definitely. He's one of the junior members of the team.
I think Dr. Park may be a general medical oncologist, not necessarily GU.
Okay. Now, was your cancer confined to the prostate, or had it spread beyond when you were first diagnosed?
It had spread beyond. They thought it had been in the bone, the spleen, and the liver and lungs. They did a liver biopsy and confirmed that it was in the liver. But since that time, they've not been able to confirm that there's any growth of the cancer in that particular in the liver. So, but I do have new growth appearing in the bones and in the adrenal glands.
Okay. So what was your first treatment?
First treatment was Lupron, followed by docetaxel. And I had 6 cycles or 6 sessions of 3-week cycles.
Right. And that was in 2019?
Yes, I finished that at the end of July, and I was essentially stagnant for the next 15 months.
And define stagnant, mean undetectable?
No growth in PSA.
No growth. What was the level?
The PSA levels were, down in the 0.0 range.
0.0, wow.
Yeah, 0.01, 0.02, those in that range.
Uh-huh.
And then they started to grow about the 15th month time frame. And last December, I participated in an NIH trial from December to the February timeframe.
And what was that?
It was a trial on immunotherapy drugs. There were 4 different drugs that I received with the idea of improving my immune system to be able to fight the cancer.
Do you recall which 4 drugs?
I do. Well, I know that M7824 was one, and my wife's here. If she gives me my notebook, I'll give you the other ones. But again, I'm sorry, I wasn't quite ready to get down into the weeds of this, but I'll answer as best I can.
You are doing great, Brian.
Yes,
So
you are.
sorry, you're doing fantastic.
All right. So, yeah, I'll find it. But go ahead and answer the questions, and I'll come back to that with the other drugs.
Okay, so let's see. You've been on Lupron this whole time?
Yes, I get quarterly shots.
And when you went to the NIH for there was a clinical trial, I imagine, right?
Yes.
What was your PSA level at that time?
It was about, I think it had gone up to in the 2 range. It had been 0.0 something, and then it went up to 2, and so it was growing.
It
Right.
doubled each. It doubled each month.
And did they do a scan before they started the new treatment or afterwards?
Yes, they did a full workup of blood tests, CT scan, MRI of my chest or my abdomen, and then a bone scan.
That was done at the NIH or elsewhere?
NIH. Now, I had previously had those done at Walter Reed.
Okay, when you were at the NIH, they didn't do a PSMA PET scan?
No, and that's one of the things that I'm obviously my ears are pricked up now in terms of trying to get that accomplished. And I've from Joel, I've found out that there are 2 local sources, one in Maryland and one in Northern Virginia, that have the ability to do that. Walter Reed, Fort Belvoir, NIH, and Johns Hopkins do not have that ability.
Right. So the results of the scans that you did have, you mentioned that the liver spot seemed to disappear. What about the bone, spleen, and lungs?
The bone has primarily been the focus, and that's been the primary spot of growth, with the exception of the adrenal gland was spotted at NIH, and that seems to be growing a little bit. The lungs, the liver, they're there's no mention of those activities. So it's primarily in the bone areas, and in the we'll go on. I had subsequent treatments with abiraterone, and I will talk about that, I guess.
Well, it's a good time to talk about it right now. When did they start you on abiraterone?
When I was in the NIH trial for 3 months, and they determined that the immunotherapy drugs were not working for me because my PSA was continuing to go up, and they recommended I go back to the standard treatment. And the standard treatment was to start the abiraterone. I was only on that for 2 months, and they continued to show a growth in my PSA level. And so they determined that the abiraterone was not working. At that time, there is another trial that Dr. Madden is doing at NIH that combines docetaxel with immunotherapy. But it wasn't quite ready to accept new people into it. It is now. So they realized that giving me enzalutamide had a very low probability of success, but they decided they would stop the abiraterone and start me on enzalutamide, and I've been on that for about 2 months now. And the bone scans that I took in the May, or I guess it was probably April, May timeframe, and ones I just completed last week show that there is some advance on my ribs with the cancer.
All
There's
right,
some new spots that have shown up.
and no reduction in PSA since you've been on enzalutamide.
No,
Okay.
but it hasn't. It's been stable. You know, it's been right now for the last 3 months. I've been somewhere around 4.8, 4.9, and I've continued in that category. But because they've seen new cancer locations, that's why they think they need to look at the chemotherapy.
Right. And so
Are they doing the same scans every time, or are they doing different kinds of scans?
They're doing pretty much the same scans. I mean, I've had radiant, the PET scans. I've had the bone scans. I've had the CT scans. I've had the MRI done. I had the MRI of my brain done to make sure there was not anything. I have a spot on my skull in terms of the bone scan, and they wanted to make sure nothing in the brain has started. And so I've had that done. The only thing is that the machines at NIH are a little bit different than the machines at Walter Reed. And so that causes a little bit of crossover problem, but not to a great extent.
Right, because it seems like things appear, they disappear, then other things show, they change. I wonder if they're just one place should be doing the same scan, whatever it is each time, and maybe other specifics. Just seems like a little weird the way things appear and disappear.
It is. I had access to NIH because I was in a trial. If you're not in a trial, then it's not a hospital you can go to. But Walter Reed is very good.
All right. Sorry to interrupt. It was baffling.
So Brian, how are you feeling in general?
Well, that's the conundrum. I mean, I feel very good. I've always had a little bit of a back problem, but I love playing golf. And, this weekend I'm signed up to play 18 holes on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now I'm not going to walk, but that's more because of the heat than anything else. But and 18 holes 3 days in a row may be a little much, but it's a tournament. I thought I would give it a shot. So, but overall, I have felt good. I don't have any until I had a recurrence of my back problem, and they checked it also to make sure it wasn't the cancer that was causing the back issue, and it's not. It's the narrowing of my vertebrae that has been a problem all along. So, I feel in a kind of a cavalier way, and maybe I shouldn't have been this way. I said a month ago, I told somebody that if I didn't know I have cancer, I wouldn't know I had cancer. I mean, that's how I felt. Yeah. And so I'm a little reluctant about the chemotherapy because, I mean, if you're feeling good, a sure way to test yourself is to start the indefinite chemotherapy that they talk about now. That's why I'm so interested in the PSMA and the Lu177 PSMA 617. I don't know the proper words to describe that yet.
Yeah, you nailed it. But we should have you, we should let Ken Anderson talk to you. He's on his 20th round of docetaxel, and he still goes hiking 10, 20 miles. It's incredible.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I mean, it really is. When I heard that, I said, okay, I'm going on the docetaxel. How long will I be on it? And they said indefinitely. I thought it was a downward spiral, at that point.
Not at all. All right, so do you have any specific questions you want to ask the group?
Well, I think I'm in the right place based upon just some of the conversations, and I'm so excited about the anecdotal evidence that's coming out from the FDA's breakthrough therapy approval of this drug. My brother, who lives in Mission Viejo, California, sent me an Orange County Register article that talked about theranostics, which I think is the same thing.
Yeah.
That the doctor at Loma Linda, who is a cancer doctor, had prostate cancer, went to Germany for treatment, and is trying to get it back into the States. So, my only concern going forward is do I have the PSMA markers? And if I have the PSMA markers, can I get access to the medication?
Right. Well, okay. Let's start off hearing from our Iron Man, Ken Anderson. Maybe he can tell you a little bit about how he's managed with 20 rounds of docetaxel.
Well, Brian, I mean, I can honestly tell you, the story is, such a high PSA, such a high PSA and then dropping low is pretty dang good. I wouldn't worry about, doing the docetaxel again. You've already done it. Did it at the time you did it, the 6 rounds, did it decrease your PSA?
It did, very much so. I mean, it dropped it down to, like 0.025, so it was very, very low. I guess the one thing I also didn't mention, I did have a biopsy done on one cancer area that's on my hip, and it came back that it was small cell carcinoma-like symptoms, but they're not sure on that. And in fact, NIH is asked for part of that biopsy, and they're going to check that. But I guess that adds additional complications if the tumor is really migrated to small cell carcinoma.
Yeah, I would agree with the comment for sure. But like I started to say, I mean, docetaxel is a drug that you can manage. You can manage the side effects. I mean, I've been doing docetaxel now, as Lynn stated, for 20 rounds, plus the 6 original rounds. So recently it's been like a year and a half of pretty stable PSA. And I'm not saying I'm going to be on it forever. I'm going to be on it until something better happens to show up. So the comment that you'll be on it forever, it's not true. I mean, you can go on it and go off it. You can do 4-week cycles as I'm doing, not 3-week cycles. And I've recently found that just adding 2 extra dexamethasone pills when you start to crash holds you from actually having the issue, the chemo crash. So, I mean, there's things you can do to manage the side effects. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Well, a question for you: are they more focused on your PSA, or they're more focused on the scans that you do to see if there's additional growth?
We're doing both. So, I mean, of course, if the scans start to show increased activity, there's no reason to continue docetaxel. Also, PSA, if it rises substantially, I'll stop docetaxel. So, and go on to something else.
Right. There's I'm not saying it correctly.
Cabazitaxel, but
yeah.
I'm hopeful that prior to that, I still have radium-223 if I start getting bone pain. Plus, there's a lutetium that's going to be approved, I think, in the next 4 to 6 months in the States. So, that's another option. I mean, there's definitely more options.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Ken. Anybody would like to comment to Brian?
Yeah, I would. Brian,
This is not necessarily, this is not of a medical fact, but I suppose in my mind that since you have tolerated ADT so well, you would similarly tolerate docetaxel very well. But I think what you need to do first of all is to come back here next Monday night and tell us how 3 consecutive days of 18 holes went, so we can see how you hold up. Then we can assess.
But Jimmy, you missed something.
What did I miss?
He needs to share with us first what his handicap is, because there's a few people on this call who are very.
Oh, yes. That's a very important question.
Well, I've got a, if you'd asked me that 6 months ago, it would have been about a 12.9 handicap index. But my index has been going up, much to my chagrin, and I'm now a 17.2 index.
Oh, I see a big smile on the face of Peter Monaco and Dennis Correa. They're going to get a lot more shots off of you. So
That's still very good.
Chance.
Well, I encourage you to keep golfing as long as you're not, in serious pain, because it is a form of exercise, and that's going to help you all the way through, even if you can add more to that. But it is good, aerobically, and it keeps you moving. I play 18 holes twice a week, and I was diagnosed metastatic over 5 years ago, but I just came off a 1-year drug holiday, and now I'm having to face the music because PSA is rising again. But we've got some things in the bag that we're going to try, and hopefully this is going to get me back down again. But I pretty much for the whole thing haven't stopped playing golf, and my index is 18 right now. So I used to be in the 12s, but I'm 75, so I'm slowing down a little bit.
Oh, I see a good match here. Listen, Brian, you can travel around the country and play golf with this crew.
I'm beginning to understand that, Rick.
I actually do have a serious comment, a couple of serious comments actually.
So getting to a different issue, Brian. So who is your primary care physician now for your medical oncology?
It's Dr. Park, who is a civilian at Walter Reed. And he just started my case after Dr. Nguyen left 2 months ago.
Do we know if Dr. Park is a GU oncologist?
He is not.
So I think, you were seeing Ravi at NIH. Can you still talk to him and get advice from him?
He and Dr. Park have been talking at least once or twice a week about my going back into this trial. So, and they're both in agreement that based upon my most recent bone scan, that I should start chemotherapy again.
So let me jump in here. There's a few things I want to say. First of all, it really concerns me that through all of this, how long ago was it they did this bone biopsy, Brian?
It was Friday a week.
No, Friday.
Oh, so it's just been
yeah. Last Friday they did the bone biopsy.
And this is the one that suggested that possibly you have small cell-like cancer, right?
No, that was.
No, you're saying the biopsy. The
Yes.
biopsy was done a month ago, and that's the one that said that there were small cell carcinoma-like,
right.
And they had two chemical names that would tend to support the small cell carcinoma, but they're not sure. That's why they said it's like, and that's why NIH has taken the biopsy material to do further studies.
Yeah. So I think, and Herb, we should disclose in all fairness that Herb runs a lab at the NIH, and he also has metastatic prostate cancer. That's the reason he knows so much about what's going on at the NIH. So it's not that we are clairvoyant on this call, but we have a little inside information when it comes to the NIH. And I should also add, Brian, that Herb is one of the moderators of this call. So
wonderful.
I guess.
hold on a minute. Hold on. Let me finish this thought, and then you'll come back in. You need to get sequenced. It sounds like that's what NIH is doing right now. I don't have a handle on the quality of the NIH sequencing, although I'm sure Herb will. But if there's any doubt at all, we need to get your tumor off to somebody like Foundation Medicine or one of the other similar companies. And we need to do a comprehensive sequencing to see what type of mutations you're featuring, because the likelihood is that if it's looking like a small cell cancer, there are going to be some mutations that are going to arise. Whether they're actionable mutations or not, we don't know, but it's probable. Herb, go ahead.
I mean, I guess what I'm going to say is somewhat different, Rick, and it's basically you're being treated by a guy at Walter Reed who's a medical oncologist, and he's talking to Ravi at NIH who wants to get you into his clinical trial. And it's not clear to me that you have a neutral BU oncologist, someone who is looking at your total picture and saying what's best for Brian. And, you know, because again, research oncologists want people for their trials. I mean, we can hear from Carl about it because Carl's an expert in dealing in those areas. But the bottom line is sometimes, as Ken will point out, a more traditional therapy may be the better option. And they may not offer it to you because that's not in their interest.
Right. So this was, that's where I was going to go next. That was the second point I was going to make to you. My guess is that you probably have TRICARE. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you have TRICARE, which is a fabulous insurance, you have access to pretty much any hospital in the country that you want to go to. And I think
that's correct.
I think if it were me, my Virginian geography is not great, but my guess is that you're probably no more than 3 hours away from Duke.
Hopkins.
Is that right?
Hopkins
Yeah.
is
The place that we normally, Johns Hopkins is about an hour and 5 minutes.
And how far? And okay, so you're further north than I thought. So the issue with Hopkins right now is that they're sort of in flux because the guy that we really, the guy, let me finish, please don't interrupt me. I promise I'll come to you after I'm done. Promise. The problem with Hopkins right now is there's 3 or 4 good GU med-oncs. The guy that we really like just left. One other guy who's there kind of has a bias, and he's a great guy, and we send guys to him, we just sent somebody to him, but I feel he has a bias towards bipolar androgen therapy. Everything he looks at, he sees through the bipolar androgen therapy lens. There's a third guy who I know Herb has seen. Some guys like him, but some guys don't like him. So I'm not committed to him. We're not committed to him. And beyond that, I've got to sort of look and see who would be there for you. Now,
you mentioned Duke. Is there a person at Duke that you have confidence in? Who?
Yeah, Dan George, who's phenomenal, and I'm actually in communication with him this week. I owe him a response on something. Now, the second reason I'm really interested that you might want to think about Duke is because they're pretty close to having the managed access care lutetium trial in play, because that's why we've been talking to him. Now, I don't have offhand, I'll get it for you in a second when I finish talking, and I'll put it in the, do you know about our chat window, Brian? In the top right-hand corner of your screen, there's going to be a little
Yes, I see it.
Okay, there's all kinds of action has been going on in there about you and other things. You'll look at it, but I'm going to put a trial number in there for you very shortly for the Lu177 PSMA Managed Access Care Program. This is like, you're a military man. This is like Fort Knox or the CIA. Trying to get information about this trial has been impossible because we have a guy who is a candidate for it. We know a couple of places that are running this trial right now, like UCLA, but nobody at Novartis or anywhere else is willing to disclose who's running it. What we do know, we think that Tulane is running it, but we're not certain. And we do know that Duke is about to start because Dan George wrote that back to me this week, and they hope to have it up and running within about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, you may be a very good candidate for that, but I really would want, if it were me, I'd want to see the results of your next generation sequencing first, because it may be that's going to show us a mutation that may have a more precise fit. And then subsequent to that, you could get into the lutetium 177 PSMA trial. We just don't know yet. Yeah. We've got guys like Dennis who have just finished a Novartis trial in Wisconsin. And we do know Mount Sinai. Somebody at Mount Sinai has been running the trial, but can we find out who? Nobody wants to disclose. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, my feeling is that if you would consider, Hopkins is good, but if you would, one thing we don't know if Hopkins is going to run the trial. It's not clear. See, a lot of this is because if you watch the link that we put in there with the deep dive into the Vision trial, a lot of it is because right now the trial's falling between the cracks of the GU medical oncologist and the radionuclide. And so it's sometimes it's not clear who's actually.
That was my fault. My wife's got it.
Okay. So I really like the idea for you of Duke, because we know Dan George is a great GU medical oncologist. We've known him for.
Okay, well, in Rick, you know, I'm healthy. Traveling is not a problem for me. So you got my ear, you got my interest.
Okay, and then, you know, Herb, what do you want to say about Hopkins?
I mean, clearly Duke has a first-rate person, and they do have the lutetium trial. I would not denigrate the people who are left at Hopkins. And I mean, Gary and I both see Carducci, and yes, he's not the most effusive person in the world, but I think he's a really competent guy. I haven't heard any negative things about his medical proficiency.
Okay, we're not denigrating him. All we've said is we've gotten mixed reports from people on him, which is exactly what you're saying. And so I'm reluctant to refer to Carducci when we've had a couple of people who have had bad experiences with him, but then we've had a couple of people like Herb and Gary who have had good experiences with him. We prefer to send people to docs who consistently get an A grade.
No, I mean, the folks at NIH and Walter Reed both have been outstanding. I did go to see Dr. Eichenberger at John Hopkins early on for a second opinion. And the folks at Walter Reed, said that they supported me going out to get this PSMA PET scan, and that they would support whatever needed to be done to eventually get me into um, maybe even on a right to try basis the medication, the PSMA 617.
So that's what this the right to try is what I've been talking about. This is the managed access care. I'm just about to put the trial number in. There's the clinical trial reference for what is effectively the right to try. The other thing I think that you probably need, because it would be helpful, is you do need a PSMA scan because your scans are all over the shop. I wonder, how do they know that what they're seeing on your adrenals is prostate cancer? Could be something else. So that's why we really need you need that PSMA scan, and what Joel has been talked to you about. Joel just joined us, by the way. But what Joel talked to you about is the Pylarify trial, which is now being made public. It's approved, FDA approved. It's available now in several parts of the country. The biggest issue for me with the Pylarify is where you get it, because whilst the technology is great, the experience of the people who are reading the scans is not that good. So, maybe what you've got to do is just get that Pylarify trial wherever you can, because you're eligible for it. You should be able to get it through TRICARE. And then you pass that scan on to somebody like George or like Ravi, whatever his name is, at the
Madden.
Yep. Ravi Madden, and you get them to look at it. But I wouldn't be hanging around, since you can get a Pylarify scan pretty easily right now.
And that, when you say that scan, you're saying that the PSMA PET scan is what you're saying. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the second one that was just approved about 4 weeks ago. And the name of the drug is called Pylarify. That's the median, the antibody, the ligand, I'm not sure the right word, Herb will correct me, that connects the radionuclide to the PSMA, which seeks out the spots.
Okay, well, we've gone on almost an hour on me. I know this is a support group. I don't know. I've gotten great information, and I'm sure I'll be back. But there were other people that wanted to talk, so unless there's something you think I really need to know here quickly.
Isn't his PSA too low for him to get a PSMA PET scan?
No, his PSA is around 4+ right now.
Oh, I thought he said it was point something.
That was early on. Today it's right around 5, 4.8, 4.9.
Brian, thank you. We'll see you again next week, and we've got to move on now.
Okay.
I want to go to Ken Anderson.
You would turn your volume on.
Sorry, Lynn, you caught me eating. Just an update. I recently had my, 20th round, and PSA, a month ago went down 2, it just went up 4. So I'm kind of just bouncing around. I have found that extra 4 milligrams of dexamethasone, I was out running around today, which is my day 4, which usually I'm on the couch. So I take it on day 3 and day 4, 4 milligrams, and I honestly get about 75% less of the chemo crash. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, thanks for that tip.
When are you getting scanned again, Ken?
Paul has it. It was supposed to go this month, but I'm going fishing instead. So probably next month. I had one in September, I believe. Last September. So
So
6 months.
no, September would be 12 months.
Well, whatever. It was supposed it was supposed to be 6 months, and I think it is. Maybe September was the wrong date.
All
Excuse me,
right.
I have a quick question. Are you taking full doses of the docetaxel, or are you they cut down the dosage?
Now, based on my weight, I take 160 milligrams. So I
Okay,
believe it's
and
a full dose.
yeah, I don't really know what the weight milligram per kilogram standard dosing is, but yeah, okay, real good, thank you.
Yep.
Ken, thanks for the update. We're going to move on next to Carl.
Hello. Couple of things. Very timely discussion about Johns Hopkins. I am going to be meeting Dr. Denmead's team tomorrow just to basically onboard myself as a patient per se, that should they have any trials that I would qualify for, that I would be put into the system going forward. In the meantime, I did get an update this afternoon from Weill Cornell about the trial I've been waiting for with the triple therapy of actinium and Keytruda and enzalutamide. The holdup originally for the beginning of the trial was that actinium was in short supply. That is no longer an issue for them. The later holdup was something to do with Merck, who is the producer of Keytruda. I had emailed the nurse practitioner to say, well, why is Merck holding it up? Is it something that they're concerned about, any potential side effects? And they said, absolutely not. It's a financing and money issues. So that apparently has been resolved as of today, and the final contract is going to be on Dr. Tagawa's desk on Friday for him to sign and for the trial to move forward sometime next week. And we will see what happens going forward. I was contacted by a pharmacist in their specialty pharmacy today as well to talk about enzalutamide specifically and related potential side effects for that. I will be needing a gallium-68 PSMA scan as part of the onboarding of the trial. I did have a number of scans and blood work on July 6th. It should be acceptable for the beginning of the trial. If not, then I have to have new scans, but it appears that I will probably not need those new scans going forward. And I also decided that I'm just not happy with my weight anymore. And it's been very difficult with, as most of us have struggled with weight and being on ADT and whatever. So I decided to start a Nutrisystem. So I don't know if anybody has any experience with that, but today is my day one, and so far the food is more than tolerable. So I will continue on that. And they asked me what my goal was in losing the weight, and I told them I want to lose 35 pounds, and that'll bring me back to where I was probably about a year ago. So I hope that will be effective. So those are my updates.
Carl, I have a quick question for you. I've heard that some of the screening for the PSMA radioligand therapies, like actinium or lutetium, that they're not just doing PSMA diagnostic screening, they're also doing FDG PET to see if there are any lesions that are picked up there that weren't picked up with the PSMA. Because of course, that means PSMA therapy wouldn't be useful if there were too many lesions that were not lighting up with PSMA, but were with FDG PET or some other scan. Did they talk to you at all about that?
No, I mean, there's been just several emails going back and forth this afternoon, not any of any great detail, but once I go in to review the disclosure document about all the potential side effects of the treatment, they will have a more detailed conversation with me about that. I assume that the 18F PYL scan that I had done at Stony Brook, that was a couple of months ago, I would expect that's not going to be useful at this point, but we'll see what they say.
Carl, Len's making a different point. And again, if you watch the Vision trial, you'll see what he's talking about because they put these scans up side by side. And if you recall, we've had somebody talk to us, I forget who it was, but we've had people talk to us about this before, who have gone through lutetium. The lutetium, the PSMA scan will show any spots where PSMA is expressed. And in many cases, that is going to show up in more detail than would on a different type of scan. However, if you don't make a lot of PSMA, it's possible that you could have lesions that show up in places other than where the PSMA shows. And what Len is saying is that before you embark on PSMA treatment, you want to just be sure that you've not got a bunch of lesions that show up in other places. Now, in your case, probably not, because as I recall, you were sensitive to that Pylarify scan, right? They did the Pylarify and they did the gallium side by side, correct?
Well, now they did the actinium.
Oh, that's it, Axumin and yeah.
Axumin, right.
Right. So, you know, since you showed stuff up there, it's probably not going to happen, but it is something that should be covered. And for anybody thinking about lutetium, they should be doing both these scans.
Okay.
That was the point. Second question, I mean, and if anybody has any questions on that, feel free to raise them. Second point, did you meet with Dr. Soraya?
Yes.
Okay,
Last week.
Is that worth an update?
Well, the update is that he repeated some earlier conversations that we had regarding starting chemo. And he believes that at this point, with my recent scans that have been stable, despite the fact that the PSA has increased, and he has repeated what Dr. Tagawa has said as far as, you know, don't focus just on the PSA. So he believes that I do have some time before I start any chemo treatments. He said it'll always be available to me at whatever point that it's decided to have that going forward, and that he said that I should pursue the Tagawa trial.
Okay.
All right, before we move on, anyone has anyone tried Nutrisystems? I think that's what Carl was mentioning.
Yes, right.
No, that was just a joke. I mean, I hope you lose some weight, Carl, but I wanted to say lots of luck on the next effort.
Thank you.
So the trial, it sounds interesting. I just hope that it gives you some results.
You and me both, thanks.
Hi, Carlos. I had a question, clarification from the moderators. Just to put back straight in my mind, I'd had a gallium-68 PSMA 11 as my original studies in localizing metastases both in bone and soft tissue. The new one that was mentioned again tonight, how is that different, better or not?
Well, Alan Edel thinks that it is the best of all of them technologically, that it shows up to the smallest level. It uses 18F, which is what's it called? Floclavine? Help me, guys.
Fluciclovine is Axumin.
No, but this uses 18F too.
Yeah, that's the PYL.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it uses 18F plus Pilenium. Go ahead and you explain it. The Pylarify.
Pylarify, right. That's the 18F DCF PYL.
Right.
Which I think is generally agreed to be a little bit better than the gallium-68 PSMA.
Right. And what is the technology? What is used in that 18F? That's what I was trying to get at.
It's still a PET.
It's a PET scan, but it's still It's
18F.
still yeah. What is 18F?
It's
Fluoride, radioactive fluorine. That's all it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The big advantage of the PYL is that it will be more readily available. The gallium is limited to where it's available, and it takes it has a very short life, or very short life. The Pylarify is much easier to manufacture. They can do it in greater quantities, and it lasts longer. That's the big advantage.
That's right. And what is the PYL hub? Pilarium?
I
Pilenium?
forget what. No, it's a ligand. It is a ligand that I think it's a peptide that links to PSMA.
Okay.
Okay, now that makes more sense. So previously there was an 18F PET scan if you wanted just to look at bones, which is much better than the gallium bone scans. And I proved that with myself because I'd had two normals, and then they finally did this one. It's like, yeah, now we know what you do and don't have. But then came PSMA, and it's like, hey, you can look at bone and soft tissue all at one shot. This is the best of both worlds.
Correct. And now there are more than one type. There's a gallium 68 PSMA scan, and there's this 18F DCF EYL PSMA scan. Two different flavors, and there's going to be more.
Okay, real good. Then I'll keep that and learn a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Okay, but I'll try and remember to send you the comparison that, or go on to Alan Edel's website, and you'll find that he did a comparison between all of these about a year ago when they were in trial, and he writes a very good comparison summary of them. So that's what I. And Herb, do you recall? Jake seemed to think about 10 to 15% of men don't show PSMA. I thought it was higher, but do you recall what that number was?
I don't recall the number, but I do remember from the deep dive that they were distinctly saying that at this point, it may be you don't need the scan. That enough, they felt, at least I got the flavor that it's a very low percentage that don't have PSMA, so low that they wouldn't, because evidently the scan is harder to get than the treatment. So that's what I remember from the deep dive. Len, did you watch it?
I did, but I don't recall them saying that. I don't recall them recommending skipping the scan. But maybe you're right.
Now that's the one I was referring to also, Len and Herb, and that's where I got the 5 to 10% number. I might be wrong about that, but they because there's such a high percentage of people that do have PSMA. They think it's probably not even worth the extra cost and expense to do the PSMA scan and go straight to PSMA treatment.
Somebody can listen again, but I'm pretty certain it's higher than 5 to 10%. I think it was around 15 to 20%, if not higher. And I don't think it's that difficult to get a gallium-68 compared to lutetium. There's probably more gallium-68 trials around than there are lutetium trials around right now.
Well, of course, the other side of the argument there is if you don't do the Polarify scan first, then what are you going to compare the non-PSMA scan to, the FDG PET scan, to see if there's a fairly large amount of lesions that are FDG PET positive but not PSMA PET? You don't want to do the PSMA PET. It's not going to be very effective.
Right, but at least, Len, what I remember is that patient, the person in that situation is rare.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll all have to give that another listen. So can we move on to Jimmy Greenfield?
Okay. Hi there. I think I'm going to get this off my chest real quick. I don't want to spend any time on it, but Rick, there's been some talk tonight about docs at Hopkins, and my doc never seems to come up in any of the conversations. I can never get an idea that everybody likes him, doesn't like him, he's popular, he's unpopular. I don't hear his name ever, and it has me wondering a little bit, just what anybody's barometer on Ken Pienta might be, because he's my guy, but I've never heard him talked about.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I knew I was missing somebody. Well, I mean, I would say of everybody who was there right now, he would probably be my man of choice, Ken Pienta. But he's opinionated, but he's a very good doc. But he's certainly opinionated, as you would attest to, right, Jimmy?
He's the bear. You don't want to poke the bear unless you're prepared. I agree.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, enough of that. I'm not going to take any time, really. I just want to say that, I got testosterone test again, and it's 287 down from 510. And I have been advised by Rick and some others that the testosterone fluctuates quite a bit. And when you're on the rebound, you can expect it's going to go up, it's going to go down. I just can say that I was feeling better as soon as it hit about 250 several months ago. But, I think about the twisting in the wind that I did about continuing to 2 years or to do 18 months, or what ended up, I stopped at a year. At 18 months, my testosterone was 37. So I suppose that when you do a round of ADT, whether it's a year, a year and a half, 2 years, that you just sort of have to, you can add castrate level testosterone to anywhere from a month or two to perhaps considerably more on top of that, of time that you're that low. And that's just interesting to me. I will only say that I don't feel that different at this 287 mark than I did at 510. I feel much better than I did, but I never felt that bad. I want to also just happily report, I've heard a lot of things over time about cramps, foot cramps, lower leg cramps. I had a lot of foot cramping waking me up at night, and I'd have to stand up to get rid of the cramp. I couldn't work it out in bed. I had to stand up. And just lately, the last month or so, as is with my other stretching, if I'm diligent about in the same way that if I'm diligent about my morning stretching, my yoga type stretching, my lower back pain disappears. If I stop doing it, the back pain comes back, the discomfort. And in the same way, these foot cramps disappear after, a short time of being diligent. So I thought maybe it's hydration, and of course it can be. And I thought maybe it'd be potassium, which my wife always says, eat more bananas. It can be. But I had a notion that if I started back on the kind of stretching I used to do when I was a competitive runner, which when I'm not playing sports, I'm not running anymore. Even though I work out hard, I tend to not stretch as much, but it's very important. And it's worked for me to get rid of these cramps, which really are quite remarkable. I wake up in the middle of the night and the foot is in a deformed position, and really, really painful, and has to be worked out, which requires me to get up, and I'm already getting up several times a night to pee anyway. So I got that worked out. I don't know if that helps anybody, but I thought I'd throw it in there. That's all I got.
So the suggestion, Jimmy, was stretch often throughout the day.
Stretch your, if you're having trouble with cramps, try to diligently stretch each day. Stretch, you should stretch anyway, but it's just like I was going to tell, Carl Foreman. I said, yeah, welcome to the Nutrisystem. If you pair some good exercise with it, it's going to work a lot better. But these are all things we know. So
that's right.
I won't go on.
Well, we're all
second that motion.
Familiar with Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I just want to second that motion. I had promoted this TheraWorks stuff for leg cramps, and I still use it as a partial preventive before my exercise. And but the stretching before exercises and after exercises really does help with my leg cramps. I hardly have them at all now, but I still rely on the TheraWorks in case I do. But I agree with you on the stretching.
I have to say, Dennis, I tried the TheraWorks. It didn't seem to do much for me, but everybody's mileage is different. All right, I think we're going to go to Peter Monaco.
Hi, Len. Yeah, I had an interesting week, to say the least. I have a question for everyone. Is anyone on Zytiga and Eliquis by any chance? I've been on Eliquis for about 3.5 years, and about 6 weeks ago, my cardiologist increased my dosage from a maintenance dose to a higher dose when I told him about my cancer recurrence. That was around the same time I started the Zytiga. And bottom line is I have had a nasty hematuria experience last week. I lasted for about 3 days. I called my oncologist, who said, I called my cardiologist in the night that this happened. He said, stop taking the Eliquis. I spoke to my oncologist, who now has taken over management of that medication. And he said, yeah, stay off it for a couple of days and it'll stop. And it did. And he put me back on a maintenance dose as of today. So now I'm watching to see if this is, but there's some underlying causes for this that are troubling. It could simply be a drug interaction thing, but could also be indicative of something going on in the bladder. So next time I see Dr. Patel, he's going to do a cystoscopy, or he's going to schedule one for me. And that's my update. I'd like to know if anybody has any feedback about drug interaction between Eliquis and Zytiga.
What I can tell you is Eliquis is metabolized in the liver by a set of cytochrome enzymes, some of which may be inhibited by Zytiga.
Oh.
So there's a very likely possibility that Zytiga is interfering and reducing the metabolism of Eliquis.
Well, that's not good.
Well, it's handleable. It just means you reduce the dose of Eliquis.
Yeah, I think my cardiologist was out of line. He probably shouldn't have increased the dosage. He did it sort of as a knee-jerk reaction. He said, oh, your cancer is advancing. You have a higher risk of blood clots now. I'm going to increase you from 2.5 milligrams twice daily to 5 milligrams twice daily, which is the maximum dose. As I said, the bottom line is 6 weeks later, I'm bleeding. And it's like, wow.
So I think you should share, Peter, I think you should share that you and I talked extensively about this.
Mm-hmm.
And after we talked, I looked up the interaction, and I did say to you that there is an interaction between abiraterone and Eliquis, and that the amount of Eliquis should be moderated, reduced, as Herb just said, if you're on abiraterone, and what your cardiologist did was exactly the reverse. And I asked you if you told him, and you said you did tell him you were on abiraterone. So, here we've got a situation where here in the support group, we're figuring out these drug interactions when the stupid doctor didn't even bother to check.
Yeah.
Because
I think,
otherwise he wouldn't have doubled. And these situations made me pretty crazy.
yeah, I didn't need this. I'll tell you that. That first day, woo, it was deep red with clots. It was crazy. Then it slowed down the next couple of days, and finally it stopped. And now the management of Eliquis has been turned over to my oncologist, Dr. Patel. I had a lengthy discussion with him about it, and he said it'll stop, give it a couple of days, and go back on it on the maintenance dose. So he wrote me a new prescription. So here I am, and I'm not bleeding anymore. So I'm happy about that.
I mean, you know, just to give you peace of mind, as I said to you on the phone, if you get a cystoscopy, you'll know that there's nothing wrong. But I think Patel was right on the money when he said, you know, the dosage is wrong, and I'll take charge of it. And then, you know, we find interaction.
Yeah, he did say that. He said the 5 milligram dose is problematic to him, and he said I wouldn't have done that, and get off it, wait for the bleeding to stop, and go back on a lower dose. So, and that's how it's played out thus far. So I did start the lower dose today, so I'll be watching it very closely.
Okay, Peter, good luck with that. I
you.
want to go to Jerry Pelfrey next, and then after Jerry, we'll go to Carlos.
Okay, Len, it's just a quick question to everyone. How many of us that are on ADT are also prescribed a statin? What percentage of us are taking a statin due to the fact that abiraterone can cause and Lupron can cause cardiac issues?
Okay, hands up, everybody who's on a statin.
My hand's up. My hand's up.
Okay. Yeah, quite a few, at least.
So have you found any untoward interactions in taking a statin with abiraterone? Anyone?
I took Lipitor just with Lupron, and people asked my wife how much longer I had. I had a hard time walking. I was getting hot flashes constantly, but when I got up, I was unstable. I could not walk for 4 or 5 paces well. Stopped Lupron and immediately Lipitor, and the problem immediately stopped. So if you have issues, think of that. There are other substitutes for Lipitor.
I couldn't tolerate a statin. I can't now either, but the two together would not work for me.
I can say, and I'm probably younger than most, but I've been on a statin for 2 years and on Abby for 1.5 years. And I hike a lot though, so maybe it's physical activity. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm on a statin, simvastatin, for a long time, and it's a low dose, but I never had any issues with that. But another topic for me with Dr. Patel.
I mean,
all right, that was my question.
I was on rosuvastatin all the time that I was on LHRH. And I mean, did I have cramps? Yes. Could it have been, were they worse? They were a little worse. Could it have been that interaction? I don't know. But yeah, but I've been on a statin since I was in my early 30s.
A lot of doctors also recommend low dose aspirin when you're on ADT because of the
cardiac. My PCP said he, at my age, 75, he didn't want me taking any aspirin. And my cardiologist, he wants me on the statin. I found that interesting because I've always taken an aspirin and at different dosages. but the last one being 81 milligrams, but I stopped it. And like I said, the cardiologist didn't really, it didn't bother him. Anyway, Len, thank you.
Okay, Jerry. Carlos, you're up.
Thanks for the opportunity. I've got kind of an oddball situation I wanted to run by and see if anybody's had anything similar to this. But in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I kept getting recurrent left flank pain. Quite severe. Initially made me think I was passing a stone, and I thought, okay, it hurts, but then it goes away, and then it comes back, and it was not going away as I would expect a small stone to do. Consequently, being a physician and looking at these problems over time, I started thinking, well, maybe it's just a real big stone and it's just going to pass slowly. So you're going to have recurrences, but it's going to arrest, stop moving, feel better. And then it's going to get some more pressure behind it and it'll move some more and you'll be doubled over in pain again. After 3 weeks and about the last 4 days being really severe, lasting 3 hours. And fortunately, I had something for the nausea. At least I could control that during those episodes. Finally went to the ER, got a CT scan, and this is the part I want to put across to the brain trust here. Turns out I don't have a stone per se, but I do have about 2 centimeters of calcification of my left distal ureter. It's still patent, but it has clogged up enough so that the backed up fluid in the ureter, they call hydroureter, just a swollen ureter, and to the point that even the kidney is showing some swelling. A big problem normally that if you don't take care of it in a matter of weeks with a stuck stone like I was mentioning initially, can damage the kidney. In my case, it seems that it must have been going on slowly, and whatever I was experiencing before was not enough to trigger me into this, I need to do something about it, pain. And now the question is, in a couple of days, I'm due to get a procedure and have a stent placed. And at that time, they will either try to loosen up what's there or just put a stent in until they can decide what to do with it. I saw my urologist today, whose first thought was, well, you've had radiation to that area. The tissues do get stiff, and people do have stenosis just by fact of radiation, and can end up with hydronephrosis automatically just over time. In your case, you've got calcification inside, and so I don't have a good answer why. I kind of pushed the question of, well, my last PSMA showed I had some lymph nodes in that area. Presumably they've all shrunk and gone down to my PSA, since my PSA is pretty much down to 0.2 now. But I said, so what's the chance that I've got cancer around it? And he said, the ureter looks normal. I don't see anything to suggest that. So then it came back to the next component saying, well, while you're there, can you biopsy some of that tissue so that Dr. Bryce can weigh in and say, yeah, let's send some of that off and see if you actually have a ureteral component of your cancer, which then kind of takes me into a different realm of what possible treatments would be considered if that, in fact, turns out to be the case. So I'll throw it back out to anybody. Has anybody had something like this happen?
Well, I have had very high, not very high, but high blood serum calcium levels. And I was advised at the time of my treatment that I had a bunch of calcium stones in my prostate that they could see. So I'm just wondering, and there's also there is also a correlation. It's in a paper from a long time ago between high serum calcium levels and the degree of aggressiveness of your prostate cancer. So the higher the serum calcium, the more likely it is that you're going to have high-grade prostate cancer or more aggressive prostate cancer. Calcium plays a weird role in terms of prostate cancer. I just don't think it's understood, Carlos. What's your serum calcium? Are you there, Carlos?
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, no, my calcium has been normal for the last 45 years. Bryce added a phosphorus, which I hadn't had done, and a magnesium 2 weeks ago. They were both normal. So it's a big conundrum right now as to what it is and why it's there. And
have you discussed it with Bryce? Have you given Bryce a heads up that you seem to have calcification in your urethra? Because I think this is right down his alley. I mean, I think he's, this is an area that he's pretty interested in. Yeah,
I had put a call out about 1:30 once I left my urologist's office, and I want to call it a Ciprostat callback message was left for his nurse to get back to me, which I find frustrating that I can't get a little more direct access to the doctor, since they're going to need to talk to the urologist doing the procedure, say, hey, yes, no, maybe. That's kind of what I'd like to know.
Have you put it in the patient portal?
I have not yet. I came home and got on here. But I can do that, and I guarantee it won't be read till 2 days from now.
Well, don't guarantee. It drives me a little nuts when people tell me what's going to happen before they even know. I mean, I can tell you at UCSF, they do read them within 24 hours. And in certain hospitals, they do read what's on their portal, and others not. But in some, they do. So I don't want you to guarantee that. And let me also say that if they don't, there are people I can now speak to at Mayo to try and get it corrected. But for everybody on the call, the first thing to do is to document it in your patient portal, because as you know better than anybody, Carlos, it goes in your record that way. Whereas a phone call to the nurse doesn't do that. And so, yes, it can be frustrating when you try to get people on the phone, but most of the guys on this call, they call their doctors, they get the nurse calling back anyway. So I really encourage you to report these findings to Bryce via the patient portal, and then to keep pursuing. Anybody else have any comments on communicating with your doc?
Well, every patient portal I've used, they always say, you must allow 1 to 2 business days. They usually do better than that, but usually takes about 24 hours.
Right.
Carlos, I'm just curious.
I certainly am hoping that I get a more timely response, but my experience with 6 or 7 interactions has not been that way.
Carlos, I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but simply because it's a non-invasive option, does it make sense to consider ultrasound to break up a stone that might be in your ureter?
Well, there's still patency to it, so there's still flow. However, those bouts of pain that I'm having are probably pieces breaking off and then clogging for some time until they can break down a little bit and pass all the way through. I've never had kidney stones in the past, don't have a family history of it, so I really don't have any particular outliers as to why that would be happening to begin with. And so, yeah,
so again,
kind of up in the air.
I kind of feel like I'm teaching my grandma how to suck eggs when I talk to you about this, Carlos. But as you well know, the incidence of calcification and stones in southern Arizona is exceptionally high. Oftentimes because we don't hydrate the way we should. And I started suffering from kidney stones when I first lived in Tucson in the early 80s, and I've suffered from them ever since. And they're exceptionally painful, so I'm truly empathetic. The idea that this calcification, that it's a calcification rather than a stone is intriguing, but I also am interested in Len's thought as to whether it could be blasted if it's in a place, because in some places they can't blast them. They're not. You probably know more about that than we do, Carlos. But there are places if the stone is located or the calcification in certain areas, they can't blast them because there's too much risk, because they can break up and there isn't enough flow for the calcium to be washed away. And so if they're too low down.
Yeah, that's probably the issue here, because we're talking about 2 centimeters length of area that you can see on calcification, which interestingly obviously didn't show up overnight. And 2 months ago when I had an MRI done, there's absolutely no mention of this. So I've taken that CT scan to that institution saying, hey, give me an overread on this. Let's look at back at 6 months ago. How long has this been going on for? And is it just now presenting because now it's symptomatic? Probably all academic, but whether it has any bearing on my current cancer component, it's still up in the air.
Anybody else on this call have experience with calcifications and kidney stones and cancer?
Yeah, I did from years ago. It was incredibly painful, but you know, I've been drinking more since.
Yeah.
Somebody else?
Yeah, I had a kidney stone. It's not calcification, but it was a stone several years ago. And I'm sure Carlos is aware of this, but there's generally, I think, at least 2 kinds of stones. Some of them are impervious to medicine to breaking up, and the only thing you can do is let it pass or do the ultrasound like Glenn suggests. But there are some that are susceptible to a medicine, and I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it dissolves. Depending on what the calcification is made of, the medicine can dissolve it sometimes. Does that ring a bell to you, Carlos?
Yeah, and actually, that's one thing my urologist said, is once we get a sampling of that, we can determine if it's calcium oxalate or something different. And depending on that, then we can try to modify diet or not. But yeah, no, blasting was my thought initially, saying, look, you've got the last 2 centimeters of that ureter okay before it joins the bladder. And if you're going to put a stent up there, go that far and then see what you can laser and break up and get through that tube now that's going to let everything through, rather than have one big, packed sand spot that's not going to flow through, as somebody had mentioned. So yeah, it's going to be a wait and see. But what is driving it is the fact that the times that it does get blocked are blocked for long enough periods of time that I'm literally writhing in pain. And right now I'm having a good moment, but they put me on a pain medication, Toradol, and that has managed to keep the pain under control, but I still am feeling episodes where it starts to ache again. And so it will need to be dealt with sooner than later. And that's where my scheduled date for Thursday is.
Well, good luck. I know it can be brutal.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to not having these recurring episodes of pain.
Okay, thanks, Carlos. I want to go to Julian, and then we'll go to Rick, and he has an announcement or a couple of announcements to make. Is that all right, Rick?
Sure.
Okay, you're up, Julian.
Yes, I just wanted to make note that I'm going through my 23 radiation treatments, and I just passed 11 today, so 12 to go.
Okay.
How are you doing? How are you doing with them, Carlos, Julian? And are you feeling fatigued? Is your gut responding?
That's the funny thing, is that I feel fatigue. I kind of feel something in right afterwards, and kind of feel it towards my legs,
And during the night, it goes away, but I feel fatigue in the morning. And I go walking to get rid of that fatigue, and then I'm better.
Great, great, great. Now, how's your gut doing? Are you managing? Have you noticed a difference or not?
On the what?
How's your gut?
Oh, it's well. That's the thing is that I have to have my clean gut and colon and full bladder, and I think I got it down to a fine art now.
Okay.
It's been difficult, but I think I got it to a fine art.
Okay. Well, you're a trooper, and we're glad. Hey, listen. The one good thing is, at least at Houston Methodist, you know everybody is vaccinated, right?
Oh yes, and I got to wear a mask when I go in there. Always though, but yeah, they're very pleasant. I meet with Dr. Verma every Thursday, and I tell her what I'm thinking, and she listens very thoughtfully. Sometimes I write questions and give it to her, and she takes them and comments on every one of them.
Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know, I think Houston Methodist was one of the earliest hospitals to insist to require that all their staff got vaccinated.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Julian. So we turn it over to you, Rick.
Thank you. So a couple of things. First of all, we've got some activities, extracurricular activities this week. Tomorrow night at 7:30 Pacific, which is kind of late for some of you other than Jake back east, we have our monthly Solo Arts Heal performance. And we've got a guy who lives with a disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue. It's a rare disease. It's a connective tissue rare disease. He also happens to be a musical performer and artist, and has written a lot of songs and goodness knows what else. And he's an interesting fellow who has a very interesting perspective on how health interplays with life. And I think it should be a good show. And as always, it'll be available on the recording. So you can go to Solo Arts Heal probably on Friday or Saturday, and you can watch it there too. But we encourage you to join us live, ask questions, tell your friends, and God bless John Ivory. I think we've got people set up for the next 3 months. I wanted to mention that very sadly, John lost his mother last night or yesterday. Probably why he's not with us today, and he hasn't been participating in our prep for tomorrow. She took ill at the beginning of the month, really. I think the first week of July is, and she was diagnosed with some type of aggressive cancer. I think it was a GI cancer, but I'm not 100% sure. And she was also very low weight. And before she even started, she was very low weight. I think she was under 90 pounds. And so she wasn't the strongest. And they decided that she's in her late 80s. They decided that home hospice was probably going to be the best option, and they've been transitioning her from the hospital to get her back home. And she didn't quite make it all the way. So in a certain way, I always have trouble saying this, but I think it is a blessing, because neither the family nor John's mom had to suffer through the cancer. And so we all wish him the best. If you want to reach out to him, it's
john.ivory@gmail.com.
gmail.com. Thank you, Len. Thank you, Jake. And hopefully he'll be back with us soon. We're so grateful for all that he does for us. So that's the second thing. The third thing, which we've sort of still keeping a little bit on the QT, but we don't really need to, but we're not ready to go full blast, is that we're very proud and privileged to say that one of our abstracts, the one that you guys all answered on this call, has been turned into an abstract and been accepted for the American Urology Association in Vegas, and it's also been accepted to the ESMO conference, the European Society of Medical Oncologists, the equivalent of ASCO in Europe. The AUA conference, this is the first year they had a patient track. They expected about 20 submissions. They got 70. They selected 10. And we were one of the 10. And I just want to express huge, huge thanks to two people. One of them is John Ivory, and hopefully he'll listen to this and he'll hear, because he helped me immensely with the questions, and then he did a sterling job in some of the analysis. And the other is Professor Herb, because we wouldn't have even done this if it hadn't have been for Herb being willing to mentor us through the process, because none of us knew what we were doing with creating a survey, creating an abstract, doing any of that stuff. And if it wasn't for Herb saying, no, we can do it, and I'll help you through it, and which he did and continues to do, because Herb's going to actually turn these abstracts into posters. For those of you who don't know, posters are kind of these large posters that, although they'll be electronic this time, that show the results of your study kind of pictorially. So I was so grateful to Herb for taking that on. The active surveillance one did not get picked up. We did a separate active surveillance. Hopefully it will next year. But Herb is very eager that we write this up and submit it to a peer-reviewed journal, and we'll include the results from the active surveillance study when we do that. So Herb, anything else you'd like to say?
No, I want to thank everybody who responded to the questionnaire. Yes. Without your responses, we wouldn't have had enough data to know where we are. And I think it's just been very helpful. And even the comments especially were helpful too. We had the free form comment section. So I just want to thank everybody for helping with it.
How is this presented at the conference?
I'm not sure. Every conference is different, and with COVID and virtual, everything is so mixed up that I can't even figure out which way it's going to be. The idea of putting together a poster, that's fairly standard, but in fact at ASCO, the posters are often accompanied by like a video chat, like a 10-minute YouTube video. So, but I'm not sure if AUA or ESMO will use that method. So I don't know. I'm going to find out more in the next few weeks.
So here's what we do know. There will be 2 screens, and all 10 posters will rotate through those screens. Now we're also going to have, because we're in another part of the conference specifically for patient advocacy organizations called Patient Connections, we're going to have some wall space. So we'll make the poster into an actual physical poster, and we'll post it on the wall where our wall space is. There will be a 5 to 10 minute oral presentation, which Herb is going to make in Vegas, we hope, in person, because they're not having an audio section, they're not having a virtual section. I'll be there to do a little bit of PR, So that's Vegas. As far as Paris is concerned, we don't know. We don't have the information. We're trying to find it out right now. We've been accepted for an e-poster, but we may finish up making an oral presentation too. Some of it's going to be up to Dr. E, to Dr. Elaney, because she was the one that really wanted us there, and I'm not sure how she wants to present us. She has some ideas, and she's very eager to get the prostate cancer patient view promoted, but they've had a patient track for 4 years. Anyway, we should probably move on because we got more people to go to, but again, huge thanks to everybody, huge thanks to everybody who responded, and very big thanks to John and to Herb. And I see that Jerry Deans has joined us, Len. I know Jerry's got an update.
Yeah. I've already promised a couple of guys I was going to them next, if it's okay with you, Rick. So we'll go to Paul Frieda, and then we can, I think we can get to Jerry after Paul.
Okay. I just have a brief one. I had my recent blood test, and I'm still in remission. PSA less than 0.1. My testosterone is consistently low at about like 215, something like that. I've been in, I'm on a Lupron holiday now, and I'm in my 32nd month of that. I'm quite grateful for that, and hope it continues. And that's about it. That's my recent blood test. Good news.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Paul. That is fantastic news. Keep it up.
Okay.
Is it?
All right, Jerry.
Hold on a second, Len, because I don't want to steamroller over Paul, because that is really great news. I mean, 32 months suggests to me, Paul, that you may have gotten a durable remission from all that treatment at the beginning.
Yeah, I had Lupron for 3 years.
Right.
I did not do radiation after my prostatectomy, but most of the post-op signals were very good. Like I was, well, I forgot what the term is, but there was no cancer outside the wall. I was outside of the prostate packet, but on negative margins was the right term. Yeah, negative margins. And so I don't know, maybe the 3 years just really put it in such a deep sleep that that it's going to take a while for it to come back. I know some people go in remission for 10 years and then it comes back. So
right. Yeah.
So I'm just happy that I've made it so far. I never would have guessed I was going to get 3 years. So that's the good news,
And I guess the reason I wanted to just pause on it a second is just for those of you guys who are still early on and you're wondering how much Lupron should I do and how long should I do. Sometimes doing more rather than less does pay dividends. Not for everybody. There's no rules. There's no hard and fast rules. But it worked for Paul. It worked for me, although I was stage 3. Well, I think, Paul, you were stage 3 too. You weren't stage 4, right?
I believe I was stage 3, yes.
Yeah. But there is hope out there.
Okay. So go ahead, Jerry.
Well, first off, my apologies. I thought I was 15 minutes early for an 8 o'clock Eastern time meeting, and I got totally screwed up. Of course, given where my mind is today, it doesn't surprise me. I got an MRI results today that says I've got cancer where I thought I had it, which is in the spine, in the femur, in the hip bones. So I'm seeing an orthopedist tomorrow. And I just want to thank those of you who have interceded for me in lots of different ways, in lots of different places. Lynn and Howard and Joe, others who have tried to get my name, in front of doctors who might have a managed access program to lutetium-177. And it looks like that, I've been given a green light to go to Duke at the end of August to see Dan George. And I credit that to, the intervention of this group. I don't think I would have gotten through nearly as fast. I know I wouldn't have gotten the responses from him that I did, but he is all for. He says they're going to be doing a managed access program at Duke, and he's welcoming me to come down the latter part of August to possibly get into that. And Duke is about 2.5 hours of rural interstate driving for me, so it's close and very accessible. So I've just got to stay as healthy as I can between now and then, and hope that this won't be too far along by the time I get into that program.
It's great news, Jerry. We're really happy for you. And please come back and keep us updated on how that's going.
My apologies for being late tonight. I really thought, like I say, I thought I was early, but so much for that.
That's okay. Happens all the time for the rest of us.
First of all, Jerry, we're really pleased you're making some headway on this managed care access, because as you and I both know, it's been terribly frustrating.
Yes, it has.
We spoke about it at length, and if you listen to the recording later in the week, you'll hear there's a new gent on the call today who's been treated at Walter Reed and the NIH, and we've suggested to him that he looks into the same program at Duke as you through Dan George. His name is Brian Davenport. He's on the call right now, and maybe I can connect you two afterwards. That is the good news. The bad news is that this pain that you've been suffering through, that you dove to, how many feet did you dive? 60 feet, 70 feet, all that with?
No. You exaggerate as usual,
okay.
Rick. I never went deeper than about 30 or 35 feet.
Okay, but am I exaggerating if I say it was your 100th dive?
No. I did 104 dives before it was over with.
Okay.
And so glad I did, because if I had to do it today, I wouldn't go. It just wouldn't go.
Well, I just think that goes right up there with all of Ken Anderson's hikes and all the other things we hear, and our friend Joe who scales mountains, and we're so pleased you did that dive, and you did it with a lot of cancer pain. God bless you. Yeah. And so we just hope you gotta work on keeping yourself fit, keeping your blood levels really healthy over the next 4 weeks, and then we got to get some of that lutetium into you, man.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Well, we're glad you came on, Jerry.
Len, I just want to check if there's anyone that wants to check in with Jerry. So.
Well, Rick, I would like to. You've probably seen the rabbit ears go up
yes,
when Jerry came on the line. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Well, Jerry, hopefully we can talk at some point, but I too am very interested in the anecdotal evidence, at least that I've seen about the lutetium, and I'm at a stage in my treatments where I think it would be very appropriate if I qualified to try that treatment.
So I'll connect Brian and Jerry after the meeting, and the two of you will, I'm sure you'll enjoy each other's company. So Brian's in Vienna and you're in Richmond. I think they're quite, how far apart how far is it from Richmond to Vienna?
It's 100 miles because I've got a son and daughter-in-law and two wonderful grandchildren that live in Richmond.
Oh, so you'll be heading down to Richmond before too long, right?
Well, if I'm going to stay married after 46 years, yes.
Okay, because there's nothing we like more than when our participants get together in the flesh and meet each other. It's a real joy for us when that happens.
Okay, Gary Peters, you're up.
Thanks, Len. My question is just about the appropriateness of a scan or no scan. I had a year ago, I had a biopsy, turned out to be Gleason 9, after which I had a bone scan that was negative. The supposition was that they were going to take out my prostate, and based on the MRI, they thought it was encapsulated, but maybe it moved at a late date. In any case, it had spread to the lymph nodes. That was in September of last year. In October, they did an Axumin PET scan that was negative. I'm now on Lupron and Eliquis, and my PSA is stable below 0.1. And I'm just wondering, since it's been almost a year, is there any sort of scan that would be appropriate, even with a low PSA? Like, is it appropriate to repeat a bone scan, or is that not necessary?
Well, I'll give my personal opinion. I think it's your PSA is too low to likely pick up anything, but I'll open it up to the other guys.
So I'm just remind us again a year ago what that scan showed, Gary.
The bone scan was negative, but that was before the surgery. And my sense of the MRI that was taken, my sense is that my cancer may have metastasized between the time of the biopsy and the bone scan and the time of the surgery. And then in October, I had an Axumin PET scan that was also negative.
And that was 10 months ago, right?
Right.
And or say 9 months ago, 10 months ago. And your PSA has been low, has been continuously low. What's your PSA right now?
Less than 0.1.
Yeah.
it didn't go right down. It didn't go low until I got on Lupron.
Okay, well, which is what we would expect. But the thing is that the Axumin scan, which was 10 months ago or 9 months ago, last October, that didn't show very much anyway. And that would have shown if there was anything to look for in the lymph nodes. And since you've been around 0.1 right the way through, you know, I think you're not going to see anything, even if you did another Axumin scan. I mean, you're too low, and there isn't anything there, and there may not have been anything in the first place. We don't know. It's just you felt like it could have metastasized. How high did your PSA get?
After the surgery, it was 3.5.
And before the surgery?
Lupron.
Before the
20.
surgery? 20.
Before the surgery, it was 20.
And when they did the surgery, did they find cancer in any of the lymph nodes?
Yes, 2 out of 3 on the right side.
And then how long after the surgery did you do your Axumin scan?
About 6 weeks.
Post-surgery, you did the Axumin scan.
Yeah, maybe 8 weeks. Maybe 8 weeks.
Okay. Well, now, guys, you have the information. Now, what do you think? Should he do another scan or not?
You know, Gary, it's Ken
Don't
Anderson.
think so.
I also agree with Jake. Not.
Certainly not a bone
No.
scan. They're pretty much useless anymore. Axumin, or if possible, a PSMA at that low PSA, it might be useful, but even then, I wouldn't recommend it myself.
Okay, thank you, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're not going to see too much on anything. I mean, I still say below 0.5, 0.6 if it's a PSMA scan, and 0.85 if it's an Axumin scan. I mean, there are some people who think you see something between 0.2 and 0.5, like Dr. Mark, because his did show up, but then he probably had a lot of PSMA coming from one spot. It wasn't very diffuse, and that might be why it showed up. And when they did the trial for the gallium, they did figure that if you were being diagnosed for the first time between 0.2 and 0.5, you might see something. But I think it's iffy, and I as everybody has said, I don't think you're going to see very much there. And you know, the evidence from October, 6 weeks after, was even then we couldn't see anything on the Axumin. What was your PSA when they did the Axumin?
It was still about, it was about 3.
So, you know, if it was about 3 and they still didn't see anything, it sounds to me like they got whatever was causing the PSA to generate, Gary. And I'd say to you, you know, just relax and don't drive yourself nuts for a while and see. Hopefully, you're going to be in the same camp as Paul Frieda.
That would be great. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, Gary, thank you. We have, it's after 8. We're going to go to Kang. He was the last one I have on record here, and then we'll wrap it up. Go ahead, Kang.
Okay, thanks, Lee. I'm okay. I don't need to, I don't really have any update, but thanks anyway. Well, I want to say my condolences to John Avery for the news that Rick let us know today. Yeah, but I'm okay. I don't have any update, really. Thanks, Lynn.
Okay. Guys, that's it for tonight. We'll see you next week on Monday. Thanks very much for participating.
Thank you, Len.
Everybody.
Thanks, Jake.
Good night,
Thanks.
all.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.